Hello, this is Marco Palmero. In this video, I want to discuss with you our waterfall methodology for finding deal flow. And I want to break down the exact steps that we use to identify off-market deals in any country, in any sector, and also the strategies and solutions that we deployed when we helped third parties with their own deal origination efforts. Now, this waterfall methodology applies particularly well to businesses that are below, I would say, $40-50 million in enterprise value, but it fundamentally works in any industry, any sector, and for any company. It's just a matter of understanding which channels work best for that particular sector and then adapting the model accordingly. Now, we have used this origination method for finding our own deals and for helping other people in finding their own deals. We worked with private equity groups, search funds, companies that were looking for acquisition or expansion, advisory firms, brokerage firms, you name it. And what is interesting to see is that this waterfall method increases the likelihood of connecting with motivated sellers that actually want to sell their business and they're not just kicking the tires. And also it maximizes the opportunities that you can find because it touches leads multiple times and it reaches out to leads where they're more likely to respond. And I will talk about the reasons for that in a second. Now, this methodology works particularly well for assets below $40-50 million in enterprise value, as I just said. And I think the most important aspect of this all is that most of what we do happens off market. And we focus all our attention on direct outreach to business owners because we don't like the idea of having someone in the middle, and we prefer building up a relationship with the person that's going to sell the business. And this waterfall method is focused exactly on that. So if you are somebody that already has maybe a network of brokers or advisors that is providing you with deals, that's a very good news. But you can add this method to your arsenal, to your toolkit, so that you can find more deal flow and ultimately identify opportunities that might not be available to advisors, brokers, and other people. Now, what is the waterfall methodology about? Well, it fundamentally leverages multiple channels of communication and it filters people through these channels so that we can connect with them where they're more likely to respond. And what is the rationale behind it? Well, if you think of yourself as a business owner, you're probably getting a lot of messages in calls and whatever every single day. Now, there certainly is one channel of communication that you prefer or that you like the most or that you use the most, where you are more active, where you are more likely to respond. And if we were to stick to just one medium for finding deal flow, we would never be able to find all the other business owners that use other channels of communication for daily interactions. So if you are a business owner that fundamentally uses email the most, if we try to reach out to you via phone call, we're never going to get through you because you never take phone calls, or you have an admin team that is taking these phone calls, and therefore you are never going to answer a call from somebody that is calling to ask whatever, information about the business, whether or not you're open to sell, and many other things. So the point I'm getting at here is every single business owner has one channel of communication that he likes the most and that he uses regularly. We want to identify that channel so that, one, we can increase the likelihood of getting a reply from that person. And two, once we nail down that channel, we can use that as the place for exchanging information with that person. And of course, then we need to gauge and kind of like probe to understand if the guy is actually interested in selling. But the first step is making sure this guy reads our communication and replies if he's interested. So it will be very limiting to just rely on one channel of communication or just a few channels of communication. And many times I see people that just say, okay, I'm gonna do cold calling, or I'm gonna do emailing, or I'm gonna do direct mail. That is certainly an effective way to get things going, but it's not comprehensive, and it doesn't allow you to get the most out of your campaigns, out of your deal origination campaigns. Now, with a waterfall methodology instead, we're using all these channels in a combination, and we're using them in a synergistic way, because the objective there is to reach out to everybody using one channel. Then most likely we're going to collect some replies from the interested people, and we're going to have a bunch of no replies. Now all the no replies are going to get funneled through the next channel of communication, and they're going to get a message there as well. And the same thing is going to happen in that channel. We're going to collect a bunch of replies, we're going to get a lot of no replies, and we're going to continue doing this as we go through these channels, so that we can find the people that raise their hand immediately on all these channels and then continue the exchange right there. Now, why is that so effective? Because again, somebody might not reply to our email, to our SMS, to our LinkedIn message, to our social media message, but they might reply to a direct call. Vice versa, somebody might not reply to a call, an SMS, or a LinkedIn message, but he might reply to an email. We don't want to lose these people just because we are too lazy to touch them, in multiple places. And it will be such a shame to lose good deals just because we haven't reached out to the person in the right way. And that is the first step that we use when we deploy a waterfall methodology. Is like, let's make sure we have connected with this person everywhere, so that if he's not interested, no hard feelings. We're not trying to spam here. That's not what I'm trying to say, and not what I'm advocating. But we want to make sure this person reads our communication and gives us a reply in one shape, manner, or form. If he's not interested, no problem. We're not going to message him again. If he doesn't reply to the first communication on all the channels, we're not going to, bug him, and we're not going to try to be spammy people, right? But what I'm trying to stress with this video is the fact that many times people kind of like believe that somebody is not interested simply because he didn't reply to their email or didn't reply to the phone call. In most cases, that person never even read the email or never received, the call or the voicemail or whatever. And so it is important to identify first where this person is more likely to be, and how can I make sure he reads that message. Then we can actually make sure he responds, and if he's interested, establish a relationship. But the most important aspect of the waterfall methodology is, let's find people that are interested in selling in all the channels and make sure we connect with them where they're more likely to respond. Now, this is a very important concept because it helps small teams, but also big teams, in creating an efficient pipeline when it comes to deal origination for a variety of reasons. The first is it creates a predictable cycle that you can actually track and measure, but also it reduces the manual effort that you need to put into this system, because it starts with the channel that has more leverage and then goes down to the ones that have less leverage. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a second. Now, the first aspect that I want to cover was the predictability of it. Well, if you have waterfall methodology in place that basically targets people through multiple channels, let's say it's email, social media, SMS, calls, network of affiliates, industry events, something like that. As you start channeling people through these methods of communication, you can create a timeline for yourself, or a cycle that can be a 1 month cycle, a 6-week cycle, you name it. You decide what works for you and what is easier for you to track. And after that period of time, you're going to have a certain amount of people that have gone through the funnel, and you're going to have data on all these channels, what happened in all the channels. And you're going to be able to assess how your leads or your potential customers, in this case, your potential sellers, respond in each channel. And so you might then use that data to adjust your waterfall method and maybe focus more on certain channels and focus less on others if you see that a few are performing better and a few are performing less well. Now, for example, there might be certain industries that do reply a lot to emails, while others might be more responsive to phone calls. After you've gone through one cycle, one entire cycle, then you can assess that and you have enough data to say, okay, let's try to focus all our attention on these few channels that perform better and see what comes out of it. And so I see these cycles as very helpful, because the more you test, the more you understand what these sellers use to communicate and what is giving you the best results ultimately. Where is it that you are finding the most deals? What kind of channel is bringing you the most opportunities? And once you have gone through the cycle 1, 2, 3 times, then you have a ton of data about what these business owners think and how they interact with you in certain channels. And you can actually use that information to, one, craft your message, appropriately, and maybe revise your messaging so that you resonate with your target audience a lot better. But also you can maybe, skip certain steps of the waterfall methodology and focus just on the few ones that are actually delivering the results. One example I can give you is that, in certain industries that we tested around the globe, we found that people were very responsive to WhatsApp messages, believe it or not. They didn't reply to emails, they didn't reply to social media messages, they didn't reply to phone calls. But the moment you reached out via WhatsApp, they were very open to a conversation. And that is just because WhatsApp in these particular countries was used for business reasons, for business purposes. And so it was actually very helpful to understand that after a few iterations, because our initial assumption was that phone calls and emails were the best tools to find motivated sellers in that particular geography. Well, in reality, we realized these tools were actually counterproductive, and WhatsApp was everything we needed to do. And so through iterations in running this waterfall methodology multiple times, we got to learn that, and then we were able to scale the deal flow that we were getting by focusing on that channel alone. Now, the second point I wanted to cover of the waterfall methodology is the fact that it enables you to focus on the high leverage activities first, and then channel people through and kind of like go down in the process. What I mean by that is actually quite simple. If you're working alone, or if you have a small team and human capital is a constraint or time is a constraint, there are certain channels that you can use to do deal origination that are not going to be the best possible choice for you in the very beginning. One simple example is cold calling, for example. It is certainly something that it is certainly a tool that can deliver tremendous results. But if you're the only person doing the cold calling, and then you also need to take care of filtering deals, negotiating, submitting LOIs, closing the deals, then it becomes very hard for you to be on top of everything. And the moment you stop doing the cold calling because you need to focus on other things in order to get deals done, you're not going to have a pipeline anymore because nobody's doing the cold calling for you. Same things apply to small teams, right? If you have just a few people that are doing the cold calling, you might be very limited in the amount of leads and deals that you're bringing in. And the moment you stop that activity, you're not going to have any more leads coming through. So the waterfall methodology starts with the channels that have more leverage and then filters people through the other ones. One example, email is certainly the channel of communication that gives people the most leverage. So it is kind of like the top of the funnel when it comes to deal flow. Then you can filter people through with maybe social media, SMS, as I said, affiliates, referrals. Then you go down for the phone calls and ultimately, networking and industry events. Now, what that does, and what I think is very interesting to discuss, is that it finds these motivated prospects not only where they're more likely to respond, but it also finds you motivated sellers in an easier and faster way. And what I mean by that is quite simple. Let's just say that there's a person or a motivated seller that is responsive both on calls and emails, right? And he's going to reply positively to you independently of which channel you use. Now, if you're sending emails, you might get a positive reply from this person immediately. After you send a bunch of emails, you get a reply from him and you got the lead, you got the deal, you can start negotiating with him. But if you're doing cold calling, you're going to need to call a lot of people before you actually get through to this person. And so the time that is going to take you to get that lead is much longer. And it is not something that you can scale. And to some respect, the problem there is that why would you want to get that lead the hard way if you can just get it through cold email? So the point is, let's get all the people that are likely to raise their hand on easy channel first, and then all the no replies that are left, we can contact via call. That is more time intensive and that is taking more of our efforts, right? So if, for example, I have 100 people or 100 motivated sellers that I want to potentially contact, and I start via email, let's say that I get 5 replies out of that are positive. That means these 5 people, I'm never gonna, I don't even need to call them, or I don't even need to, use other channels to reach out to them. I already got the positive reply. I just can take them to the next step. Now I do the same thing with social media, for example, and I get maybe out of the 95 that are left, 5 more that are interested on social media. Very good. Now I don't need to do 100 calls. I just need to do 90, right? Now I can do SMS campaigns. I can do, a network of affiliates, referrals. All these things reduce the amount of people that I need to contact and reduce the heavy lifting that I need to do from a call or a networking perspective. And they still get me the leads. So if they fundamentally reduce the effort and give me, they give me the results. So again, taking the example of 100 people, I get 5 via email, 5 via social media, 5 via SMS, 5 through referrals. Now I'm down to 80, and these 80, maybe let's say 15, 20 of them replied with a no interest as well. So I just have 60 left. Now I need to just make 60 calls compared to 100. And you might say, well, that's not a big deal. Well, if you take that scale, it is quite relevant, because if you need to do only 60 calls, you might say, yeah, I can do it in a day. But if you need to do 600 or 6,000 instead of, double that amount, then it becomes a very relevant figure, right? And if you can reduce that amount using a waterfall methodology that starts with the more leverage channels first, then it becomes a lot easier for you to handle the process, especially if you're working with limited resources. Human capital is a constraint, and of course you don't have, a 25 team of people that can just pick up the phone and call every business owner in that area, because if you have that, probably that is not the channel, that is not the bottleneck, I'm sorry. So you don't have that kind of issue, right? Now, from a waterfall methodology perspective, this helps, again, in connecting with a lot of business owners that are likely to respond. It builds up relationships with them directly so that we can then establish this kind of relationship to discuss the potential sale of their business. And it also streamlines the process and minimizes the time that you need to put into this in order to get predictable results. And so each channel delivers to you leads, and then you're left with a few people at the bottom that might be no replies, or that might be not interested at this point, that you can just rerun through the process in 2, 3, 4 months time. What we've seen is that a lot of motivated sellers, or a lot of people that are interested in selling their business, on average go through a 3-month cycle. I don't know if it is because they look at their financial statements every quarter or something like that, but it is interesting to see that many things can change in a quarter. And so we have seen that people that were not interested when we reached out in January, for example, then they were more interested once we reached out in April, for example. And so we've seen that there's a 3-month cycle that happens when it comes to DealFlow. And it is very good to be able to follow up with these people effectively through these channels, or just rerun them through the process if they never replied. And of course, I said that in the very beginning, we're not planning on spamming people, because if somebody says, I'm not interested, I don't want you to contact me again, we're not going to touch that person anymore. We don't want to be that kind of guy that reaches out and keeps pushing just to talk with a person if he's not interested. But if he says, just reach out to me later in the year, or he doesn't reply, we might touch him again 3-4 months after, just to see if something has changed. Because things do change in selling a business. I mean, when you think about exiting a business, especially if you're heading towards retirement, things can change quite quickly. And not necessarily somebody who said no today is going to be a no 3, 6, 9 months down the line. And so it is important to have a pipeline that can keep these people in the loop and keep contacting these people, so that we can find them when they're ready to take the next step and kind of like move forward with the process. So in a nutshell, what is this waterfall methodology about? It leverages multiple channels to reach out to business owners directly and connect with them where they're more likely to respond. It helps people reduce the time that they need to put into origination, and it facilitates the process of qualifying prospects, because after you got them, it is also easier to qualify them, and I will talk about that in a separate video. The point is, you can build all this thing on your own. It is quite complex to make sure all the channels work together, because we might not want all the messages to go out at the same time on all the channels. We might want to use a strategy that is synergistic. So we send an email, the guy doesn't reply, then we use the social media message where we say, I reached out via email and you didn't reply. Is it still worth the conversation? So these slight adjustments are something that need to be integrated into the system to make sure it works properly. And you can go ahead and build it on your own and test it out, see how it performs. It's certainly going to deliver results if you build it out correctly. But if you don't have the time or the human resources to build all these things on your own, then we can help you originate that deal flow and build the system that works for you almost on autopilot. Because we've done it for other people, we are doing it with private equity groups, small firms, companies that look for acquisitions, search funds, advisory firms, brokerage firms, you name it. And what is interesting is that depending on the industry, the market they're targeting, we choose which channels to use after initial phase of testing, and then are able to predictably track the performance that generally compounds over time. And why is it that it compounds over time? Because what I just said a few minutes ago, because people might not be interested today, but might be interested 3 months after. And so these people that we reach out early on are maybe laters, if you want to call it this way, and they might reach back to us 3 months down the road. But if we keep channeling people through the funnel, we add new prospects to it. We're going to get the positive, inflow of people that we contacted before and the new leads that we're connecting with. And so this will create a positive momentum that grows after the 3 months, cycle, after the 3-month period. Now, this works for all industries, all markets. I mean, we have sourced deals in the Middle East that is a very complex region where it's difficult to find data. We sourced deals in places where English is not the primary language, the UK, North America, you name it. I guess the objective of this process is to solve 3 key issues. First is time issue. So if you're working on a time constraint and you want to accelerate the process of getting quality deal flow off market, then a waterfall methodology really can help you with that. Resource perspective, I talked about that a lot in the video. If you're working with limited resources, especially human capital, then this methodology can help you. And it goes without saying, quality and quantity of deal flow. If you're looking for more and better deal flow, this can certainly help. Now, the objective is to create a bespoke workflow or funnel that works for you and delivers leads that are exactly what you're looking for. And in order to do that, it is important to clarify 2 things, 2 variables. The first is your search criteria. So, it's very simple to say, but what type of business are you looking for? And are you laser focused on one niche, one country, one specific geographic area? The second is, how qualified would you like these prospects to be? Because once you have them available, once you get these people to raise their hand, you can qualify them a little bit more, you can qualify them a little bit less before they actually connect to you to interact more. And that is something that we can do on your behalf if we were to handle your deal origination process. If you do everything on your own, you will need to build these things internally, and then you have your own infrastructure that you can run. But if you don't have the time or the resources or the capabilities of doing that, then we can be your extension, your deal origination partner that basically finds the deals for you, it qualifies them, and then sends them to you once they're ready. So you spend all your time negotiating and closing deals instead of finding them. So if this is something that resonates with you, there's a link below that you can check where we have a couple case studies of people we work with, and also, next steps in terms of getting together and understanding whether or not we can help. Now, we don't help everybody simply because we want to make sure we can add value, and we want to make sure we can actually deliver on the deal flow that you are expecting. There are a couple of examples that I can give you from that perspective on what this wonderful methodology can deliver. And a lot of that is related to the 2 variables that I just mentioned. So your search criteria and the qualification of the lead. If you're somebody that looks for quality, then the most important aspect for us is going to be, let's bring to you deals that are checking all the boxes. One example is a hospital group we work with that was looking for hyper qualified deals. And in that case, we brought them only 21 in 5 months, which is a very low number. But those leads ended up converting into 1 acquisition that was worth 50 million. So it was a pretty good ROI. On the flip side, we worked on quantity with a search fund in the US that was targeting the entire East Coast, pretty agnostic in nature. In that case, they wanted volume because they wanted to do the screening themselves. And so we brought them 20, 30 opportunities on average every single month. Now they got 2 LOIs in place. Hopefully they will close on one of them soon. I haven't checked with them in a few weeks. But I guess the wonderful methodology can deliver what you expect, but the outcomes are going to be very dependent on the 2 variables that I just discussed. So your search criteria and how qualified you want the prospect to be. Now, if you want somebody like us to take care of your deal origination process, again, check the link below in the description. You're going to find out some information about us, how we can handle this process for you, and also how we can take the next steps. We don't generally work with a lot of people every month because, again, this process takes time and it it takes a refined approach. So we want to make sure we can build a bespoke pipeline that delivers what you want. But provided we have slots available, happy to connect with one of our team members and see if there's a way we can actually help. So this is what the waterfall methodology is all about. Building up a pipeline that channels people and connects with them through all these instruments or channels, and then make sure it finds people where they're more likely to respond, so that we can increase our results, get more deal flow, and create a compounding effect that keeps bringing you leads over time. And it kind of like creates a disproportion between the time you put in and the amount of leads that you get. Because the most important aspect of it all, if you're looking for deal flow, is of course getting quality deal flow in a reasonable time frame and have a pipeline that is sustainable, so that you don't just have one deal that is your only bet, but you have multiple options to choose from. And even if one doesn't close for whatever reason, because we know that not all deals close, you still have available opportunities that you can leverage to ultimately get one deal across. So if you want us to work with you on finding deal flow, building up your deal flow pipeline, check out the link below, and I will see you in the next one.